Hi guys, and welcome back for another episode of the Martial View. This time we are speaking to the fantastic Andy Gibney, who he's got a brilliant history in the martial arts through Jeet Kune Do and also stick fighting. And he is also the co-founder and co-owner of 3P Publishing, who interestingly we went for Martial Masters with, volume number 1. So the original first print was through Andy. So thanks, Andy. Thanks for being on the podcast with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. For anyone that doesn't really know you, do you just want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction, maybe a little bit of a bio, just about who you are and what you do?
Well, martial arts wise, this is my 40th year of training. I feel quite pleased that I've actually, one, reached this age, two, still training, no injuries. I mean, that's a miracle in itself, isn't it? That I've got no injuries. Funnily enough,
what's your secret? I need to know.
Well, this is interestingly, an osteopath once said that I had the perfect body, and that was interesting, just him saying that, because that made me laugh. Because being 5'7" and having short legs, he said, because you've got a compact body, longer bodies tend to have more room to get injured, and so that's it. The other reason is I know how to be lazy. So when I have an injury, I rest it, whereas so many of my students don't. And one of the guy who's trained with me the longest, a guy called Glyn Daniels, who's a multi-world champion, has also got a false hip now. He had a hip replacement years ago as well. And I always told him to stretch correctly. And interestingly, if you follow the career of David Goggins, it's something that he talks about all the time, is the stretching. And I'm not very flexible, but I stretch 3-4 times a week. And I know how to be lazy. And but equally, you've got to get that mixture of training as well. So that's helped me to train a long time. So I started with Shotokan, did Kempo, did a few traditional arts for about 6 years, and I was very fortunate enough to go to a Larry Hartsell seminar in 1987. I met Terry Barnett and Rick Fay, who were both helping out that day. Terry took me on as a private student, and then I was with him for about 18 months, and then did 3.5 years with Ralph Jones, trained with Bob Breen. And Bob Breen was my coach who got me into the British team as well. And so I was in the British team for 6 years and got 2 world silver medals at a time when you could only compete. There was only, I think there were 8 or 9 divisions as opposed to 121 that there are now. So it was a lot more difficult. And we were in the early days. We were all cowboys in terms of it was a wild west of a screamer in those days. You could foot sweep and you could butt strike and all sorts of stuff. They took most of those rules out by the time I'd retired. But we learned a lot, and we learned a hell of a lot, and it was a great time. And then from there, I met Danny Guba, who became my Dossie Paris instructor, and I'd met Richard Pastillo in 1990, and he became my main JKD instructor. And Kako and Richard are now passed away, unfortunately. Danny's still out there winding people up and making people laugh, but I still learn from all sorts of different people.
Wow, what a fantastic background then. So where to begin with that, really? I suppose we should begin straight at the start then with, your first kind of martial arts class, your first introduction to martial arts. What made you go there, and what was the experience like for you?
Like most people of my age group, Bruce Lee was a big influence, but I was too young. I remember my mum going to see Enter the Dragon. I don't know why she did, but she did. I remember talking about that. And we used to have a program called Tiswas, and they used to show these clips from Enter the Dragon and World of Sport, which was bizarre, really. Why do they show film, these sorts of things? And that was it. And then we had Kung Fu with David Carradine, and I'm an Elvis fan. And Elvis was one of the early stars to put martial arts into movies, and I was fascinated by it. And I went along to one class when I was 15, and my dad wouldn't pay the £1 fee it was. I'm not paying that bloody rubbish, because he liked boxing. And so I never did. I went back when I was 18. And how about this? This is how customer service has changed. So I went to this class, and it was like, I don't know, 30 people in white suits in there. And I went in, and I sat down on the bench to watch. And the class went on for 2 hours, and not a soul spoke to me.
Yeah.
And then when it had all finished, they all bowed and went out and just left me sitting there. No one said anything. So I thought, well, that's unusual. Maybe it's like this test you do, like in Kung Fu Panda, where you have to wait outside the gates and stuff. I went back again, and the next lesson, which was 2 days later, exactly the same thing happened. No one spoke to me. I thought, this is really weird. And then I went back third night, and finally someone said, "Would you like to join in?" And I thought, no, I just really like watching people sweat because I
Just
want
like the
to
ambiance
join
and
in.
smell.
So I was just baffled by how weird this was. Anyway, I joined in and I thought it was amazing. And it was Shotokan, so it wasn't amazing, but it was hard work.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about flexibility, and I didn't have any. None. I was 18 and made of concrete. But I was absolutely obsessed, and pretty much as soon as I could, I was training 6 days a week. Used to train at home in the bedroom. We had a single bed. I was living with a girl that was 17, and we used to pick this bed up, move it to the side. I used to do catters in the bedroom and put the bed back, and then do it like that. I couldn't get enough.
How did she feel about that?
She thought it was ridiculous, actually, but she was fine, actually. I mean, like most women in those early days, they all left me. So needless to say, you know, I was just, it seemed that I was obsessed, but I was.
What was it that obsessed you, do you think? Was it the movement? Was it the culture? Was it the philosophy? Was it just everything?
Yeah, it was learning. I'm dedicated to learning, you know, even now. You know, my obsession at the moment is Wim Hof, the breathing methods, the cold therapy, very much into David Goggins' philosophy, very impressed with Ross Edgley at the moment as well.
Yeah.
The guy who swam around the UK, and I'm always looking for something that adds to what I already know, because it is true that once you've trained for a certain period of time, what you're doing then is you're reviewing the basics constantly. And when back in those early karate days, I always used to say, you know, improve your basics. And students, of course, always want the jumping, spinning back kick and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And Richard Bastillo always asked the same question nearly every seminar. And he would say to someone, what's the most advanced technique you can do? And they would come out with, I don't know, you know, like a stick and dagger, it might be, or it might be literally a jumping, spinning back kick, 380-degree kick. And Richard used to say, but what if you knock them out with one punch? How much more advanced you want to be? and I thought, see, that's JKD philosophy there. That's simplicity.
Yes.
Get it right first time. But of course, to get it right first time is very difficult. So Jeff Thompson told a story once at a seminar that he did with Neil Adams and Rick Young. And Jeff said that he had this guy, and he comes to him. He said, phoned him up, said, Jeff, so I'm working the doors. He said, but I'm having a real problem. He says, I keep hitting people and they don't go down. He said, you know, and I've seen that what happens, you know, he was great at knocking people over. So Jeff said, well, come in, let's work on the pads. If someone he knew, let's work on the pads, let's have a look. So he got him on the pads, and literally he said, I did a minute's training with him. And he said, I know what your problem is. He said, what's that? He said, you can't fucking punch. and that's really the essence, isn't it? You know, that what we do, there isn't much to do, really. You know, the essence of all arts is you pare it down to not very much. I mean, after 40 years, I still don't think there's anything better than half a brick in someone's face. You know, it's still brilliant.
Yeah, simplicity.
Simplicity. But yet, the dichotomy is, it's so complex, it's so varied. You look at an Inosanto, who is just the walking encyclopedia of martial arts, and you just watch him, even on clips we're seeing at the moment coming out through Facebook and YouTube, and just you're just baffled all the time, and you're intrigued, and you want to know this and you want to know that. And then when you look at someone else's modern philosophy of a Goggins or Ross Edgley, and you think, well, how does that fit in? And if you look at Wim Hof, then he isn't really doing anything that different from Shaolin breathing and that type of stuff. It's just his approach, his cold approach is different. But I find it really interesting because of the breathing I did when I did Tai Chi nearly 40 years ago, you know, and the breathing from the abdomen rather than from the chest. So I'm always interested in the new, and I see how it fits with the old. You know, and I just see that perfection of technique is still the goal, really.
The Wim Hof stuff's really interesting because quite a few people that I've spoken to recently have really been getting involved in it. And I've just started reading his book as well now. And I tried my 10-second cold shower this morning. It didn't go well. I just jumped straight out, to be fair. Straight back to the hot one.
You know, I've been doing the cold showers now since the 1st of January. And the cold showers are okay. I don't mind that. But when it snowed here the other day, you know, on Sunday, I thought I'm going to go out and I bottled it. I was like, no. And I should have gone out, because the next day I went out just in shorts, no shoes, just shorts, no top. And I went out in the garden, And literally within 30 seconds, I wanted to stay out 30 seconds. The pain in my feet was unbelievable because it's constricting the blood vessels in your feet.
Yeah.
And I did the upper body made no difference at all. I wasn't cold at all. That was fine. But the pain in my feet was really surprised me. My girlfriend went out. She stayed out there for 9 minutes.
Okay, go figure.
She's got tough feet, and she's tougher than me. Probably is the fact of it. You know, it's just. But I couldn't believe how much it hurt, and so I wanted to go back out the next day, but of course it all turned to slush by then. So if it comes again, I'll be interested to see how that works, because I am intrigued by the properties of the cold. I mean, I run in a hoodie and shorts. I don't wear long. I saw 2 blokes in tights last week. I mean, just ridiculous to me. Shorts and tights. Behave yourself. You know, so and I quite like the cold there. That's okay. I mean, it feels tropical. It's like 9 degrees out there at the moment, and it feels so warm. It's unbelievable. So and then reading Scott Carney's book, that's really interesting, where he talks about the brown fat deposits and how that then leaches to white fat from the thing. I mean, I've lost 9 pounds since Christmas, so that's going reasonably well. My breath holding is just surprised me. I started off at 1 minute 27. And this morning I did my best, which was 5 minutes 53.
This is what people have said to me that I've spoken to about. They said that, you know, they've been doing kind of the minute and a half mark, and then within a matter of a couple of weeks, really, of doing, you know, the deep breathing, the Wim Hof kind of thing, they're pushing up like the 5 minute mark, and it's like they're surprised and they're not quite sure why. That's what they've all said to me. They're not entirely sure why, if it's like pseudoscience or what it is, but something, obviously the results are there because they're doing it and they're able to do it.
Yeah, I also find that you're learning to breathe differently, because when I am not breathing, my chest is still moving. So you can feel it, but there's no breath going in and going out. And so that's interesting in itself. So that relaxation when you're in there. My resting pulse has gone from 63 to 46 as well, which is, again, in a short period of time, is very, very surprising. So I am intrigued. I mean, that's as low as when I was in my 20s now.
Yeah. Have you always been kind of like a lifelong learner? Have you always wanted to learn new things? You like just investigating different things? And is that what attracted you maybe to the JKD? Because it did just take from so many different arts and different forms, maybe.
It definitely spoke to me. I live with a fella called Phil Vizian, and it was his house, and he was a Kempo black belt. But he had all the early JKD books. He had the Tao, and he had the Fighting Arts series, and he also had the Art of JKD, the Art of a Life of Philosophy. What is it called? Anyway, Dan's book, and the Art and Philosophy of Jeet Kune Do. And that's the best book I've ever read on Jeet Kune Do. It's been a shame that it's been out of print for such a long time, but I'm fortunate I have a copy. And all of it intrigued me, you know. And at the back of that book, there's all these names: Richard Pastillo, Ted Wong, Larry Hartzell, all these people, and I wanted to meet them, and I met them all, you know, every single one of those people, and they all spoke highly. I remember when you used to meet Larry Hartzell, he used to speak very quietly. He was a big fella and had a very quiet voice, and he'd start telling a Bruce Lee story, and he'd go really quiet like this, and in a big room, and we'd all be like this, you know, crawling into his ear almost. Speak up, Larry, for Christ's sake. And he'd tell the Bruce Lee stories, and we'd go, oh, Bruce Lee, you know. It was real hero worship. And of course, as you get older, you realize that there's a man behind the story, and you try to understand the man. And that's why Richard was so interesting to me, because he knew the man. And I wanted to know about the man, not just the art. And consequently, it was a philosophy that made sense to me, because you could bring all these different things together. So when I started to learn NLP, nonviolent communication, Tony Robbins, cold reading, all those things that I was learning, I was using the Jeet Kune Do philosophy to distill what was useful to me, but research my own experience. And this is what always drives me mad. So many people miss the first line. Research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own creation. And they just think it's add specifically your own creation. But most people are numpties and don't know what is, they have no experience. Yeah. How do you know? You know, going back to the Jeff Thompson story, what is his problem? What is the cause of his ignorance? He couldn't punch. Yeah. So once you learn that, then you have that essence of what you're trying to get to, which is the core of everything. And then what are the spindles that come off of it? And then the Filipino arts fits so nicely with the Jeet Kune Do, but that's because of Dan and Richard, really. But then there are those, right side forward or strong side forward, and economy of motion, hit on the first strike, all that type of stuff, all makes sense. And when I learned Dossi Paros with Danny Guber, even more it came to come together more. And I'm very fortunate to basically train with world-class people my whole life, and of course that helps your standard, doesn't it? So yeah, that's really it. It's the whole understanding, and it's the whole how can I push myself, challenge myself more, and that's really been my whole interest my whole life.
Fantastic. Let's talk about some of your competing days then. So in 94 and 96, you took the silver at the Stick Fighting Championships. So moving back then, so you did the Jeet Kune Do. Obviously, you like that, you like the philosophy, then moved into the Filipino martial arts after that, I presume, looking at...
No, same time. Came same time.
Okay.
Yeah, came same time. I mean, when I went to the Larry Haskell seminar, I taught a little bit of stick, but then I trained with Terry Barnett, and we used to train in a garage in Woodford, North London. Do a 3-hour private lesson for 20 quid. Unbelievable. Could get the train for 8 quid return as well.
Yeah.
It's one of the great things about being old. Everything was cheaper. And so Terry would do 2 hours of Jeet Kune Do and 1 hour of Kali. And that's what we learned. And so it was always intrinsic together, never ever separated. So what happened over the first few years I was learning Filipino martial arts and Jeet Kune Do together was there was always these big gaps because there wasn't there was no syllabus. No, Ralph didn't have a syllabus. I never saw one. And Ralph Jones is a fantastic, most unsung JKD guy in the country. And I recommend you put him on your podcast. Actually, he's a lovely, lovely guy. Goes right back before Jeet Kune Do was even known in this country. So he first started with Bob Breen. And so Ralph was very, very helpful for a long, long time. And he introduced me to stick fighting. What happened was, in the March of 1990, he had competed in the first championship. I didn't even know it existed, didn't know it happened. And then in the August, he said, oh, there's a tournament in November. He said, it'd be nice if you had to go. I was like, at what? And he said, stick fighting. I said, what is this? So we were outside his house, me and a guy called Doug Tucker. We used to train together in Ralph's garage, and we had to go outside because there was no room to fight. So we were out on Ralph's driveway in Armour. I had never experienced this before, and he said, right, go. I thought, go where? And Doug started hitting me, and my response was to wrap myself around him like a spider. I was like, now what do I do? It's just like I didn't know what to do. And Ralph said, no, you can't do that. So gradually it was introduced to me, and I trained for 3 months and then competed in the November of 1990. There were 4 of us from my club, and we competed, and we just got hammered, just like beat straight away. And then I competed in March, and I fought in the wrong weight division, so I learned to fight in welterweight. And I didn't do very well in that one. And then there was a Larry Hartsell seminar at the same time as the championships later in the year, and I'm going to Larry Hartsell. And then I called Bob up one night, and Bob always used to be at the academy in London, and I was talking to him, and he said, look, we're having trials for the British team. Do you want to try out? He said, I think you've got some potential. I think it was just buttering me up, to be honest. I went to London. I drove from Northamptonshire to London, shitting myself because I thought I was going to get my head kicked in. And it was brilliant, and I was fit. That helped. My skill level was low, but we trained from, I think we trained for 2 months. About 2 months, and then we went to the Philippines in 1992. And this is how funny it was. We get to the Philippines, so we're all on a plane. 11 of us, 12 of us on a plane. I think 11 of us and Bob. And we get to the airport, and then we booked a hotel. We had no hotel. We just turned up and went, can we get a hotel? To do what? Oh, we're in the Eskrima Championships. And I always said, what's that? Because we were in Manila, and they called it Arnis in Manila. Didn't even know what Eskrima was. So eventually we found this Swagman hotel that was run by 2 blokes, one being an Australian. I think they were both Australian, but one used to get more progressively drunk throughout the day. So by the evening, Terry used to be smashed out of his brains, and it was hilarious. And the other guy used to run it. And the Swagman became our base. And I competed, and I got my first wins in the 92 championships. And John Harvey says to me, well, you compete in the first one, you go back to win the second time. I thought, oh, great. Almost like it's a given. Sure, and I went in 94, was much more skilled by then. Had a great tournament, got a silver medal, and it was beaten by an English guy, Reza Raymond, who'd been crap the whole way through the training, was like the laziest fucker you could ever imagine. And then in the final, he turned into a demon. And I was like, oh, blimey. Anyway, it's all right. I'll do it next time. And I went back in '96 in America. And again, my skill level had gone up. And my girlfriend she'd won the world title. And I switched off mentally. I know I did. I didn't fight. I've seen the fight. It took me years to watch the fight again. I was so disappointed. But I finally watched it and I thought it could have gone either way, actually. But if I'd known all the stuff mentally now, I'm sure I'd have won. But that was my true disappointment in terms of martial arts, was never becoming world champion. You know, I trained world champions, but I never became one. So, but you know, number 2 in the world's not too bad.
Not too bad at all, no. When did the transition happen from competing to coaching?
Well, it was immediate, really, because I was a club, you know, I was a club coach. So, you know, once I'd started to learn, you know, there was Tony Reeve, Phil, and Paul Daniels, and we all said, well, we're going to go for it. I mean, it was hilarious in our early days because we had no armor. Armor was a nightmare to get hold of in those early days. You couldn't get it. So we used to train with Italian army jackets, and we put pads inside the jackets, and then we wear motorcycle helmets. And what happened with the motorcycle helmets was pretty soon the grills would all get smashed in. The plastic grills would just fly off all over the place. And then you'd lift his arm to hit the stick, and a pad would fall out, and you just get hit straight across the body with a stick.
Yeah.
And we kept thinking, God, this really hurts. And we went to the academy, and they gave us padded jackets, and we thought, maybe that's the way you're supposed to do it. And then the helmets, one of the guys was quite handy with a welding tool, and nicked a Sainsbury's trolley and cut the trolley apart, and then put the grill around the helmet and just bolted it to the helmet. But your neck was
a stick fighter.
Yeah, so then your neck was exposed. So sometimes you get a belt across the Adam's apple, which made you jump. And we developed this what was it? Like a collar. We put this collar around it, covered in masking tape and all sorts of stuff, and it was just awful. And then in '94 when we went, so for 2 years we competed and we had no armor.
Yeah.
Just ice hockey gloves. And in '94 we went. I think we borrowed some jackets from somewhere. And then in '94 I went to the Philippines and bought some armor. And that really helped our progression. And between '94 and '96 we became the most successful club in the UK.
Wow, fantastic.
That was good. It was all about learning from loss, really. You know, you just getting beat, and the more you failed, the more. My girlfriend at the time was really good at analysing videos, so she'd sit there and watch these videos, and we'd talk about stuff. And she was really instrumental in not only the development of the club, but also the development as a stick fighting team.
Yeah.
She had a great rivalry with a lady called Donna Ribbett, and because they didn't like each other very much, their skill level went up massively.
Sure.
And that happened quite a bit. Me and Lee Bander are great friends now. Bloody hated each other at the time, you know. So we'd smash the shit out of each other. And he got one victory, I got one victory. So we finished our careers evens. But everybody learned, you know. And then someone like Neil McLeod would come through, was just amazing.
Yeah.
Pat O'Malley in the early days was just a fantastic fighter, really amazing fighter. And then you'd see that this hold that they'd have over psychology. So Pat would come in and he would be like Muhammad Ali of that time, because he would intimidate people. And then people start to realize, oh, you can do this, you can do that. And then everybody's time comes of being a champion as well. But Pat was consistently the best fighter for a very, very long time. And he was to be admired. I mean, he was arrogant and cocky, which helped when it came to being a fighter. I mean, you know, me now compared to a fighter, I'm a much nicer person, because all fighters are arseholes. I mean, there ain't no two ways about it, because they're so selfish, and it's the way you have to be in order to win. But when you retire, you become a much nicer person, I think, because you're not trying to hold your level back. And what I used to find when I was competing, I wasn't teaching certain things. And once I stopped, I'd teach everything, because I didn't want anybody in my weight division to beat me. No one from my club ever beat me. So my ego just wouldn't allow it. You know, it was as simple as that, really. And we had some good fights. And of course, what happens in the club is then you become a fighters club. And it's terrible for business. I mean, awful. Because what we do now is we train people to develop as a person, as well as develop in their martial arts skill. And what happens is you are there for them. But when you're competing, you are there for yourself. and obviously they get that. But once people would lose and then go, oh, I'm not training anymore, noises. You would say, but why did you start? That's not why you started. You didn't start to compete. You started to learn martial. Oh, yeah. And so that was another reason for attrition in the club.
Sure. Let's move on then for the unified fighting systems. So this, I think you established in 1987. Is that correct? So how did this come about, and what was it like for you to establish your own kind of thing, I suppose?
The UFS?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd been at college, and these two crap black belts claimed that they were like 6th and 4th dans or something, and they weren't green belt level. I don't know where they got off on this stuff, and they used to teach at this college class. I said, I'm bloody sure I can do better than they can. And I'd been training for 6 years or so then. And I worked at McDonald's, and we used to have, it was like Cato in McDonald's. People, because we were bored all the time, people would fly out the air and attack you in McDonald's, and you'd be doing all sorts of stuff. And we'd have fights at McDonald's, with the customers. That was always amusing. And I thought, I'm going to set a club up. So my mate Phil, who I'd learned the Kempo black belt, we agreed we'd open this school. Anyway, he only lasted about 3 weeks, and then he said, I can't be asked. So I took it over. I had no black belt at the time. And I was walking to work one day, and I just came up with this idea of unified fighting systems, because finding the good names hard, isn't it? It's really difficult.
Definitely, yeah.
For everything. And I thought, oh, okay. So, I mean, basically, I do anything with 3 letters. So UFS, JKD, NLP, NAC, anything with 3 letters, I'll do it. and so
WWE.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, everything else. I'm probably closer to WWF, actually, more like a panda. And so that's how it came about. And then we started off with like 6 people, and after a few weeks, it dropped to 2. But the room we had cost me £2 to rent it, so I was never going to lose. But yeah. it was in a pub or in a bar, and it was on a Sunday. Now, anybody wanting to set up any martial arts school, never book it from 12 till 2 on a Sunday afternoon, because that ain't a good time to do it. And that's what I did. So we always had low numbers, and then gradually it sort of came together. And in '93, I went full time. I left real work and set up on my own, and I set up a company which became No Brain No Game, which is what it is now. And I went full time. And once I went full time, I had to make it work. It was as simple as that. You know this, So in the late, in the 90s, even with the stick fighting going simultaneously, it was successful, and then we were lucky enough to get the place we're in now in 1998, which is a converted room in a shoe factory, and we ended up with 2 floors for about 6 or 7 years, and then we expanded the top floor where we are now, and I'm incredibly proud of it now. It's a beautiful building.
It's lovely. Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
Thank you. And last year, with COVID, we had the chance to spend some time on it. It was going to spend 2 weeks, but I was wise this time. I got painters and decorators in instead of me doing it all. And they did a fantastic job. And you don't realise how tired things look until you change it all. And then you realise all the crap that you've accepted. And I think that's true of us as well. Men are great, aren't they? Because we can go through, if we've got a gate at home and it squeaks, we'll go through that gate for about 5 years. Oh, that squeaks. By the time you've reached the door, you've forgotten about it.
I don't know if you can hear this, but
yeah,
that's got a nice squeak on it that I've been meaning to get fixed for. Oh, there you go. For about a month now. So yeah,
a month. See, you're just a beginner.
I know. Well,
my front door needs washing, and it's needed washing all for a year now. And as soon as I walked through it, I've forgotten it needs washing. So I think that's what was happening with the martial arts centre, and you don't realise it's getting tired. We got new mats down a few years ago, and it looked good. I was doing the cleaning, and I said, right, moving forward, that's not happening. I'm going to get someone who cleans properly. And so when people were allowed back in those glorious 15 and a half weeks that we didn't have lockdown last.
What a beautiful time it was.
It was a beautiful time because it was all fresh. It was like that scene at the beginning of Titanic where you can still smell the fresh paint. It was just amazing. And, now most classes I teach on Zoom from the martial arts school, and I'm the only one there. It's almost like it's a tragedy that it's just me there. Everybody who came back said it looks great. When the sun shines through as well, it is like a grand design. It's just a fabulous place to be. It's somewhere that you can be proud of for new people to come in, because the challenge is getting new people into a martial arts school. You think of all the things that stop them from coming. They're scared. They think they're going to get a kicking. They think that everybody's going to be better than them. And then they come to my martial arts school, it's at the top of a forest gate. Oh my God, I'm terrified of heights. Oh my God, it's this door here. What's in that place? Oh my God, it's in a crap area. All that sort of stuff. You've got to get past all of that. And then they walk in, it's like the TARDIS, and they just go, shit, didn't expect it to look like this. Because it looks like Cobra Kai. Got the nice wall at the end. It's got that Japanese looking wall. All it is MDF and some nicely painted beams. But it is that image that hits them. We've got a sign that says, welcome to your second home. It is that stuff that you want someone to come in and go, right, this is my place. When we've got pictures up, we've got one of Richard, and then on the other wall, we've got pictures of the people who train there. So that they have that identity that it might be my school, but it's your place to come. It's your place that you can learn, and you can learn safely, and you can have fun. And if you come in like all of us, and you've had a shitty day at work, and within 15-20 minutes you've forgotten about that, because you're concentrating on your combinations, and you're trying to learn double stick sombrada, and you're like, oh my God, blah, blah. Can't think of that because your brain only has so much space, and then you're off. And that's what I want it to be. I want it to be that all-encompassing, passionate environment. You come there and you are welcomed. And none of this sitting on the bench for 3 lessons before anyone will talk to you. You come in, what's your name? Try and remember their name straight away. Basic selling skills. I mean, it's nothing that we don't already know. And Gordon Bircham will go on and on and on about all that stuff. He's absolutely right as well. When you do Facebook Lives, try and get them involved in it. And I think COVID has taught us many lessons.
Yeah,
I think it's taught us the most dedicated students, because they're there on Zoom. It's taught us that it's easy to lose. It's taught us that we can do, look, on Sunday it snowed, and I couldn't run a class on Sunday, but now I can run a class on this thing. So we have missed 3 classes since 1987. So now we don't have to miss classes. We can just go, right, I'm set up in my library, I can do it here. If you want to join in that night, you can. And the kids are really like this. They're really involved. And I think the parents like it because of they're not a school. We give them some sense of rhythm and routine. And
normality.
Yeah, absolutely. And this whole thing has developed massively, since those days where we were scratting about looking for pieces of information. And now, because we are in the, what did Tony Robbins called it something the other day? It wasn't the information age. It's almost like we've got too much information. We're just seeking wisdom all the time. So you can go on YouTube, you can learn any art you want pretty much on YouTube, or, you can go on our courses and you can buy our courses and you can watch everything there. But you don't get that feeling of what it's like to have the instructor there, like I was back in the garage with Terry and with Ralph all those years ago, where you can just ask a question, or sitting, you're in your car and Richard Basillo, the bloke who's trained with Bruce Lee and has been in martial arts for 70 years, is sitting next to you telling you the stories. Or Kakoi Kinyeti, who was having 100 stick fights and never lost a fight. You say, Manon, tell me about this, and he would laugh and he would tell you. Priceless, absolutely priceless. And what endeavor can you do that is like that? You can talk about football. There's lots of great stories in football, American football, in gymnastics and stuff. But martial arts does have this, I think, this triangle of spiritual, philosophical, emotional, that hits us in our hearts more than anything I have ever seen. Boxing does have it to a degree, and Muhammad Ali was a great philosopher as well as a fighter. Tyson will always talk about the history because Cus D'Amato taught him about those things. But martial arts is so encompassing, and I think anybody who trains for a year and then leaves it, they're coming back one day, because they'll always be haunted. Because I know my voice will be in their head somewhere one day when they're sitting watching Netflix and watching Cobra Kai. And they're going, I should be doing this. This is fun. This is, and then they come back and then because what they are is they're scared of the pain of the ache, not the punch in the face. It's the knowing that if they train on Tuesday, on Wednesday or Thursday morning, their legs are going to hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where Goggins says, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, there is no growth in comfort. We all know
It's a good
that.
thing. It means you're working. It means you're progressing.
100%.
It means you're developing.
100%.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Richard Bustillo then, who was obviously such a huge figure in the martial arts and an absolute legend. You were quite close with him. Obviously, you were. He was. Yeah, you were just really close with him. So what was he like as a person? What was he like as a teacher?
The nicest thing he ever said. We went to he was teaching at Tony Pillage's place one day, and we'd had a little falling out, not a big falling out, but we just had a little falling out. Friends do sometimes. In the May of 2013, and he was there in the October of, I think it was October 2013, and we were sitting on the sofa at Tony's, and he was teaching the seminar, but he wouldn't teach. He kept talking to me, and I'm like, I ain't paying for this seminar. I said, Sifu, you got to go and teach. He went, I want to talk to you. I went, yeah, but they're paying you quite a lot of money to go and teach these guys over here. And I'll be fair, it was a crap seminar because he kept talking to me. They were doing stuff and everybody's respectful of Richard. But he said to me, you're one of my closest friends. And I bet he said it to a lot of people, but I loved him for it anyway. And he was so lovely to me. I met him in 1990 when he was known as the Iron Man of JKD, and he was scary.
Yeah.
He was in his late 40s. And was he 48? So 10 years younger than I am now. And he was in good shape. He'd only recently retired from Continental Airlines to go full time, and he was on his first world tour. And John Carrigan and Martin Sterling brought him over, and I was really lucky because they were friends of mine, and so I got to spend a little bit of time with Richard that day. And then a year later, or maybe less than that, 6 months later, we brought him back, and I hosted my first ever seminar. And so we drove him to Ollie Batts in Cambridge the next day. And again, you start. And on and off, I would see him for the next few years. And then for about 18 months, I didn't see him at all. Martin had stopped bringing him over. And I was involved in the stick fighting. And then Richard hosted the 96 World Championships. Yeah. Anyway, I had this relationship with him of a sort, and I wanted to train at the IMB. So on the Monday morning, me and Anne-Marie and Mark Hayes, or was it just me and Anne-Marie? Yeah, all three of us. We went to the IMB on the Monday morning after training outside with the stick fighting team, and we got to the IMB, and I kid you not, it was like turning up at Mecca. It was just because the IMB was big. I mean, a really big training facility, and he let us train for like $10, and we did the morning class, and he taught it. That was what amazed me. Another guy did the warm-up. It was only like 12 people in the 10 o'clock class, and then Richard took the class. Wow. I thought he just did it because we were there, and he didn't. That was the way he was. Yeah. And then I said, well, who's bringing you over? And he said, well, no one. I said, well, can I? And he said, well, these are my fees. And I went, no, really? Okay. All right. Yeah, all right, we'll do it then. So we brought him over in 97. And it was really interesting because I'd been trying to get my apprenticeship as a Jeet Kune Do instructor for quite some time. Yeah. I'd sort of fallen out a little bit with the Inasanto group, me and my big mouth. And so, you know, I wanted to get my apprenticeship. So Richard came over in 97, and he was really weird with me for a whole weekend. Like, he was always so open, very Hawaiian, very laid back. He was lovely to everybody else, but with me, he was odd. He had dinner at my house. Anne-Marie cooked for him, and we had dinner, and that was it. And then on a Sunday night, after I took him, because I always used to take him back down to Heathrow Sunday night and drop him off, and then he'd catch the early flight home. And we stopped at his hotel. He said, have a drink with me. So, you know, they opened the bar and we sat and had a drink. And he changed like that. And I realised that what he was doing was sussing me out. He'd spent 2-3 days asking me all sorts of questions. How was I with my family? He wanted someone who was reliable to look after his operation in the UK. So I realised that's what he did. And then the next year I got my apprenticeship certificate. I was very proud. And it sort of went on from there, and we bring him over. He introduced me to Kako. I'd met Kako in 92, but didn't really know him. And he said, well, what about bringing Kakoi over? So I brought Kakoi over, and then we did the Dossie Paris conference in 99. We did the Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do conference that no one else has ever done and can't anymore because they're dead. You know, it was a unique experience. and we just got closer all the time, and a lot of that would come from doing tours of the UK and sitting in a car with him.
Yeah.
So you would just learn about the man, and he would learn about you, and he would tell me stories he wouldn't tell in seminars because they weren't for public consumption. And gradually this bromance appeared between the pair of us. There wasn't that many years between us. I loved him to bits. And the night that they announced that he was ill, I thought they got it wrong, because Kako had died the year before, and I thought, well, he'd been with us in November of 2016, and it was good. He had, I mean, we had a massive seminar. Bloody place was packed, and I always thought he's going to slow down, and we're going to have to start going to him.
Yeah.
And it was in the end of March of 2017, and this thing popped up on Facebook, and it said he's really, really ill. And I was like, what? And he never told anybody that he had stage 4 cancer. He didn't tell his wife either. He didn't tell anybody, because he never wanted anybody to treat him differently because of how he'd been, the Iron Dragon, you know. And he was a tough guy, but he had a lovely soft heart, but he had great skills, was very, very funny, and would give all the time. He was always a giving man. And as he grew older, he turned into Pat Morita in The Karate Kid. You know, he became Mr. Miyagi, really.
Sure.
Kako was very different. Kako was the most skillful martial artist I've ever met because of his, you know, he trained for 90 years. But Richard was the closest to the, see, Kako was a grandmaster, but Richard was the closest I had of an idea of a master. And I don't consider myself anywhere on that level whatsoever. He was time served. He'd seen it all. He knew bullshit when he heard it. He'd tell you if he knew it. He had great stories. He had great skill. And everybody you spoke to, there were 1,000 people at his funeral, put it that way.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible man.
So he was great. He was great. And part two of, because I wrote this book. So this is Punch Above. I don't know if it's going. Is this going out on? It's going to order, isn't it?
Anyway. Yeah. No, it'll go on video as well. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Punch Above My Height was my personal history of Jeet Kune Do Volume 1, and I didn't know it was going to be Volume 1 until I realised the bloody book was getting too big. So part 2 is now 4 years out of date, or 4 years late, but I want to write it because there's going to be a lot of stuff about Danny and Kako and Richard in there. There's quite a bit about Richard in Punch Above My Height, but we want to talk more about the development of Filipino martial arts and how Dusty Perez came about, because the whole story of how Danny ended up in the UK is hilarious in itself. But because of all the stuff that Kako had told me, I want to share that. You know, there's Anton St. James is doing Kako stuff down in Portsmouth, and then there's me. You know, there's still promoting this amazing martial arts guy that so many people have never heard of, and YouTube is so funny. When you see a clip of Kako and they go, "Oh yeah, I'd have done a double leg takedown." Do you know what, mate? In the 50s and in the 40s, he was the toughest man. You know, he was comparable to every one of the tough guys. You know, and he was out there doing it with stick. You know, if you got your head bashed in, that was it. And he had 100 fights and he was never beaten. You know, it's a record that's unbelievable. He transcended everything, really. You know, when the Way of the Warrior came on in the 1980s, they focused on Kako Kinyeti. In the book, there's like 2 paragraphs, but there's a whole episode to Kako and Dossi Perez. And that made me want to learn more about the weapons as well. You know, these little clips that they put in, like in the Kung Fu version, there's a little clip of Dan and Chris Kent is in it, and Cass Magda. But they dedicated a whole episode to Kako because he's a warrior, a proper warrior. And I'm so fortunate to have been able to train and know these people. What the weirdest experience of my life was when we did the Dossi Perez conference in 1999. Kako used to stay with my girlfriend's mum's at her house because he didn't like hotels. He liked homely. And he'd be there for 2 weeks. So, you know, it costs a fortune a hotel, but you know, I'd chuck her mum a couple of £100 or whatever it was, and she'd look after him for 2 weeks, and he loved it. And this one day, I walk into Anne-Marie's mum's house, and Kako and Richard are sitting drinking tea together in the kitchen. And me, that's like Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger are sitting in my girlfriend's mum's kitchen in Kettering. How did that happen? Yep. You know, to me, I was starstruck. It was really, really weird. And I didn't get a picture of it. That's what, how stupid am I? Because we had proper cameras then. So we got lots of pictures of them together at the event, but not in our kitchen that day. And it wouldn't have been lovely if I'd have just filmed it. It would have been brilliant. But it's in my head, and I still have that memory. And that is the most surreal moment I've ever had in martial arts.
Most definitely. Lucci's asked the question, and he'll kill me if I don't ask you it. But the story about doing an underground seminar in a car park, was it?
It was in a car park.
Yeah.
It was this guy called Martin Sterling, who Lucci used to work for. And Martin was the biggest rogue I've ever met in martial arts. The only person close was Tony Pillage.
Okay.
But Martin and Tony were cut very much on the same cloth. Brilliant marketers. Although Martin was probably worse than Tony with money. Okay. So he set up this place. He hosted the first Basilio. So he had Jerry Petit there. He had Tim Tackett there. He had all sorts of people. Sorry about these things. Messages come through.
Cool.
And so he said to Richard, look, he said, I've hosted these seminars before. Some people say, you know, it's a bit of a watered down version that you're doing, safe. Can we do like the dirty, nasty, gritty JKD? Richard said, yeah, sure, of course we can. So he did it in an underground car park in the building they were in. So it must have been 60, 70 people there. They got the TV cameras down there as well. And Richard came down, and they were all, here we go. We thought it was going to be like Fight Club, you know, it's going to be like. And Richard came out, started doing Pak Sao Lop Sao. We all went, what's he doing? And he did exactly the same seminar that he did wherever it was. You know, so he did, we never saw the dirty, gritty, nasty, because Richard weren't daft enough to know that we were going to get hurt people and slam them in the concrete and all that sort of stuff, which all the mental cases like Lucci and me and all those guys, Richard Hudson, we were all like, yeah, let's do all the nasty stuff, poke people in the eyes, kick them in the balls. And so we were all, but it was a brilliant time. And we all got these nice T-shirts. I still got my polo shirt, and it was from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, because Martin was a big philosopher guy as well. And we did this unique under in a car park, dusty, dirty, all sorts of stuff, car park in Nottingham, under you know, in the almost in the dark. But it was, I must have a picture somewhere of it. I'm sure I have, and some of the other guys might have it as well. But it really was funny because, yeah, we're going to do all this. He came out and just went, Pak Sao Lop Sao. So he did anyway. Because you couldn't tell Richard what to do, but you could draw stuff out of him. Yeah. So I might say, you know, you never teach Villa Kali. I'd love to see how that compares with Dossi Paris, you know, like in Stick and Dagger. Oh yeah, we can do that, and then you go and do it. But if you said, Richard, we teach Villa Brau, he wouldn't do it. It was, I was having a chat with Bob Breen once, and he said there are two types of people. There's people you push and people you pull. And I'm a person you pull, because if you push me, I will just resist. Yeah. But if you encourage me, I will do it. One time we were training for the in the British team, and Anne-Marie used to react. If you shouted out, come on, go mad, she used to react. If you shouted at me, it made me laugh. I just like, pack it in, will you? It's just killing me laughing. You had to say, look, if you do a little bit more of that, you'll do this, and that was the way. Yeah. Richard was someone you pulled, you didn't push him.
Perfect. Let's talk about then. So obviously, being a martial artist, you are now also a publisher for books with 3P Publishing. As I've said, we went through Martial Masters Volume 1 with you guys. Yeah. Did an absolutely fantastic job with it. We loved it. Everyone loved it. So yeah, how did that all come about, and why did you decide to go into publishing books?
Well, interestingly, I had tried to write books. I wanted to write a book since I was 8. Started them, couldn't finish them. And I got serious in my 40s, and I couldn't finish anything. You know, one story I started was about a guy who was, I became a big fan of Derren Brown about 20 years ago. Yep. I was lucky enough to meet him, went into the magician's world, learned a guy from cold reading from a guy called Ian Rowland, who had taught Darren how to do cold reading, did loads of great things. I thought, wouldn't it be good if like a cold reading magician type mentalist started working with the police? And I started to write this story, and then I gave up on it. And about a year later, the Mentalist came on TV, and I'm like, shit, I could have written that.
That could have been mine.
That could have been mine, but it wasn't, because I never finished it. But what did happen was I wrote this little book called The Magic Number. And interestingly, I wrote it in a house that's like 200 yards from here. It's like in that bedroom there. That's why I wrote this book. And I was doing a talk And I had the opportunity to sell from the stage. And the year before, I sold a DVD and a video, a DVD and a CD, and I didn't have anything to sell. So I thought, I'll write a book. And I wrote this, it's like 130 pages or something, about how to make your life work in 90-day chunks. And I wrote it in 3 weeks. We printed it in a week, and it was all done. The whole thing was done in 4 weeks.
Wow.
Don't ever do that. It's a really stupid way to write a book. It had so many typos, it was unbelievable. And it wasn't this cover, it was a different cover.
Yeah.
And then I've gone back, I've edited this 3 times since then. That's how many times it needed doing. But I had done it and I'd finished a book, and I thought, that's really interesting. So the next time I thought, well, I'm going to write another book. So what can I write a book on? So I came up with this, which is called How to Seduce Your Wife or Anyone Else's. Now I'm getting married this year. I'm going to have to write one called How to Seduce Your Wife. Now I've got one. So
Sequel.
Yeah, the sequel. So I came up with this idea, and I still think it was a good idea, but I wanted to do it right. I wanted an ISBN number. Where'd you get them from? And anyway, so I found out where you got them from, and then I started to think, well, how are we going to do it? And so over the 14 months it took me to write the book, edit the book, and everything else, get the cover done right, because I still like that cover.
It's a good cover, yeah.
Just so you know, that's my hand.
Which one?
The one that looks
nice
like
nails.
Yeah,
the one
yeah, the male hand. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one, Dan. Yeah. And Kimmy, who is the belly, she's actually done 2 other covers for us. She's great. She's done 3 of our covers. And so I wanted to do it properly, you know, and I wanted to sell a lot of books. That was the idea. Anyway, then I started to think, well, how did you seduce your wife? What about if you switch that as a business idea? So seduction became a business concept. How to seduce your customers or anyone else's. Okay, that could actually go. And I was very fortunate that I had this friend of mine called Caroline Snelling, who I convinced to become my business partner. I mean, she's regretted it loads of times since. But we did this without any knowledge of running a publishing company. But we set it up. We did a big book launch. We had a masked ball. We did the whole thing. Spent way too much money on it. Got in the national press. Got in all sorts of stuff. Went around the world. I mean, the Times of India, all sorts of things. And it became a relative success. You know, it did all right. And then it made me think, well, hang on. If I've got all these questions, there must be loads of people who don't know how to do this and never researched how to publish a book. Just did it, you know, just came up with ideas. And then I started to think, well, if we treat authors like they would like to be treated, like getting a fair return on their books. I mean, you know, because you're now doing Martial Masters through Amazon, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And what's this retailing about? 12 quid or whatever?
Yes.
You're going to get about £3 to £3.50 out of that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Whereas with us, you were getting that full amount. And I know the reasons why you're doing it through Amazon and their distribution and everything else. And we just thought, you know, authors are getting them stiffed by Amazon. Can we do something better? And it's developed really. So in time, I've written another 2 books. I wrote the martial arts one, and then I wrote a book about how to write books, which is called Top of the Pile. That one there.
Yeah.
And we've done over 70 books now, and we've got authors in America and Australia and Spain, and obviously lots in England. But it's all to do with helping people to bring their book out in a way that they get financially recompensed for it, and all the copyright is theirs. I remember this is a question you asked me and Lucy asked me right at the beginning, who owns the copyright? Well, you do. You wrote the bloody book. We don't want your copyright. We want to help you. And if we do a good job, you come back and do other books with us, and that's happened many times since. So it was done from ignorance, really, you know, a naivety that even now staggers me, because if we'd have realized how many people publish books, we'd have probably never done it. But and it took a while to establish, you know, a lot of work from Caroline as well, helping me. She is the background person who does all of the accounts, she does all the admin stuff, she does all the things that makes a business work, puts process into place. I am the blustery guy up the front who does the videos, you know, does the selling, understands the marketing. If we're a very yin-yang couple as far as the business is concerned. I'd have never done it without her. And now we've got a team of 10 that work with us. So, you know, we've been very fortunate in the people who work with us. And as I said earlier, before we came on this, we've been very fortunate because of COVID, because people are out there writing books.
Well, exactly, like the rise in people putting off or having projects that they've put off for however many years, etc., and then now have kind of found this time where they can now put their projects into use, I suppose, and get them finished, or get them published, or get them, you know, online, or do whatever they want to do with them. What would be what would be advice from you, I suppose, for anyone that's interested, or has maybe got an idea for a book, or maybe they've got half a book done or a quarter of a book done or whatever, but they've just got that initial little spark of wanting to do something with it?
Well, let's talk about the writer part first. So you go back to advice from Ernest Hemingway, and he always said, just keep going. He said, what happens is that you start to doubt your belief, like I did with the Mentalist story. Oh, no one's going to read that. So you stop writing. And the only way to finish it is get on and do it. Give yourself deadlines. That works really well, and work to the deadlines. If you just ignore the deadlines, what's the point? But like with a Magic Number, I had 3 weeks to write that. And I had that. I did the same thing with Top of the Pile, but I had a team behind me by then to help me. I had 5 weeks to write that, and some of it was already written. But we had a cover designer. We had so much. I wouldn't recommend you write that fast. You can if you want, but know that someone out there will want to read your work, and that is true of everything. I mean, there isn't any book that won't be read. That doesn't mean lots of people will read it, but it does mean there'll be a book that's read. So there's always a market for a book, but only if the author believes in it to start with. Now, once you understand that that's it, you write your book, you have your manuscript, and you send it to us, and you agree to work with us. That's only part of the deal, because the first part of the deal is writing the book. The second part is publishing the book. If you come with a company like ours, we take care of that. You don't have to worry about that. That's all done and dusted. You've played with Amazon. They're bastards, aren't they?
They are bastards, yeah.
It really is hard, isn't it, to try and make it work?
They don't make it easy at all.
Right. But you give it to us, we take care of it. There is no stress at all. We look after you, and we will continue to look after you, because the next part is marketing. That's your third part. Don't do marketing, no one knows your book comes out. And then finally, there's the selling of it, which means that someone, and this is where the respect for the reader comes in, that when you produce a book like this, and it's got like 160 pages in it, full of good advice, costs $7.99. An average person will read that in anywhere between a few days and a month. So you're asking for that reader's time, but you're also asking for $7.99 in times when it's uncertain. So you're asking them to have money and their time. So you must respect the reader, and then as you respect that reader, you in yourself as a writer, you follow Roald Dahl's advice, which is write something that someone wants to finish. Because Roald Dahl's advice, thought was always, if someone gets to page 94, puts it down. You know, that's not what you want. You want them to go, why do you write? To elicit emotion. You want someone to cry or laugh or be scared or be passionate or want to know more. That's why you write. And these arts that we do, the martial arts and the writing arts, are all about passion. It's all about getting an idea across, that when you do something, when we teach with passion. Eddie Quinn talks about this a lot. That if you teach without passion, stop teaching, because you are a waste of time and you are wasting your students' time, which again is respect to the student, isn't it?
Completely.
But when you go into the class, I never plan classes, I mean, hardly ever. Because every time I plan one, the wrong audience turns up, you know, oh shit, I've got to do that now. But when you teach with passion, you get the message across. When you write with passion, when you sell with passion, it's one of the toughest parts of me helping authors. They produce something they're proud of, and then they don't want to tell anybody about it. And yet there are people out there who are writing shit and selling millions of books.
50 Shades of Grey.
That is exactly 50 Shades of Grey is the best example of hope as a writer. Now, E.O. James is a very, very smart woman. She's also a very rich woman. She knew her niche, she knew her market, she understood the business, and she went for it.
Tick, 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 done. Let's go.
And yet, we have people who are proud of their books. You know, you're going to write number 2 of Martial Masters.
Yeah.
Your goal is not to sell 100 books. Your goal is to sell as many books as you possibly can. You know, you've already said we've got great people in here. Let me just look in here. I can't remember the interviews. Look, we've got Scott Caldwell, not alive anymore. This is making him immortal. Tony Pillage, not alive anymore. This is making him immortal. We're not saying if you go to Dan and Lucci, you're going to die. That's not what we're talking about. But what we are talking about is let's get your message out there. Eddie Quinn's in here, Phil Norman's in here, Bob Breen's in here, Andy Norman's in here. You will live forever. You know, it's our tagline and our thing. We will make you immortal. You know, Graham, who died a few years ago, we made him immortal, and Terry Clemson and Tony Pillage. Once you have a book, people will always know you existed. You will always know you're there. You don't have to keep going on about it. If they want to learn about you, you will be there. And you know, you can delve into, you know, us now. We can go into the writings of A.A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh, books that were written 100 years ago and are still selling in massive numbers, as Enid Blyton, as our Roald Dahl, as our Ian Fleming, all these great writers, and you are taken into a world you never saw before. Now, can you compete with that as an author? Well, you can actually, because if you speak to your audience will love you. Ross Edgley's books are really, really good. I've never even heard of it until like 2 months ago. You know, and yet I have been bowled over by what the man did, and now I am a fan. And that's all we want, is people to be fans of us as teachers and as writers, because if they love what we do, we can give more back, can't we? I've just done the Tony Robbins thing for the last 5 nights. You know, I did my UPW 19 years ago, and he's still out there, still banging it, still knocking in thousands and thousands. They're like, what was it, 596,000 people on the thing that he did the other day. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he's going to get the page is going to come to, because they're going to love his stuff, and they become fans. Last night after my class, I clicked on Instagram and David Goggins was live on an Instagram. Oh, watch David Goggins live. That's fun. It was fun, you know, and you know, I was lucky enough to meet him. There was only, when he came over 2 years ago, the only martial artist I knew was me and Paul Coleman, who met him. And all these people want to meet David Goggins. Well, why didn't you go to Expert Empires then? No, you just didn't go, did you? You know, and that was, I wanted to talk to him, ask my questions. I did. I met the guy because I wanted to get close to what is real, the essence of what we do. And so everything must come from passion.
Most definitely. Perfect. Have you got any final thoughts for us then, Andy? Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for doing this. I mean, we said 45 minutes and you let me go over my time, so thank you for that to start with.
Of course, no, it's been super interesting.
Edit stuff out or whatever you want to do. So the first thanks is to you. And also, you know, I've known Lucci a long time, going back to the Martin days as well. You know, I've seen how he's changed. I've seen what he's doing with his passion for Kaizen. It comes back there, you know, that we don't even know. We're hoping we can do it in June, July, whenever it is. I forget when it is now.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
That it can be done. That he's trying to do something that is special. We saw it with Seni, and we saw it with the martial arts show that Quatlin did. It's not easy to keep pushing this stuff. And there are people out there who, as a student, go and look at the people who've been around a long time, because they've been out there a long time and they're still high profile because they have something that most people don't have. The Bob Breens of the world, the John Harveys, the Ralph Joneses, all these guys that I have known for years and years and years. I mean, Rick Young is still up there, still looking absolutely amazing. You know, I think he's around my age, 50, late 50s, early 60s or whatever he is. Bloody hell, just always been the top JKD guy in the UK, always. And when you compare them with what we see in America, so much of the UK guys have superseded what they were doing because we were taught by good teachers and we love the arts. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That when you train, I'll tell you one thing I would say actually, keep a training log. I tell my students to log their training and they go, oh yeah, they do it for like a month and then don't do it. And then when you come back and look at your data, because this is what I've learned through running a business, your business will be judged upon the data. So when we look at we have targets we have to hit every month, or we aim for every month. And if you don't have targets to hit in your training, how do you know when you're drifting? You know, I've done it as well. You know, you can go, you know what, I think I'm running like 20 miles a week. And then you look at your training log and it says, no, you're doing 15.
Yeah.
Now you do that over 50 weeks, then you are many, many miles off where the target was. So set yourself challenges, have a training log, be true to yourself, you know, always be respectful of your teachers and your students, and love the arts, really. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. I really appreciate it. So that was Andy Gibney, obviously JKD instructor, stick fighting champion, and co-founder of 3P Publishing as well. It's been another episode for the Martial View. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. If you want to see our faces, you can check us out on YouTube. Otherwise, you can check us out on Spotify and all the other podcast channels. And Martial Masters that we've talked about a little bit today as well. That's now available on Amazon, with Volume 2 available in the spring of 2021. Fingers crossed, as long as Amazon still aren't bastards. So don't hold your breath. Cool. Thank you again, Andy.
Thanks a lot, Dan.